I'll do whatever it takes to get rid of you. And don't think the threats to your family were empty. Those were real. If you don't like it, bring your resignation immediately.
Provoked by the second-generation president's words, I silently handed over my resignation letter. He momentarily froze, caught off guard, but soon broke into a triumphant smile, as if celebrating the removal of an obstacle. With genuine contempt for him, I asked one final thing. Although he nitpicked about using polite language, I had already decided to quit, so I didn't need to use honorifics with this guy.
I don't recognize you as the president. You'll regret this. Goodbye.
I ignored the second-generation president, who laughed mockingly, and left the company. I am Daniel, a 62-year-old working in sales at a major company. The company's president and I were classmates, and together, we founded the company. Although he offered me a management position as a co-founder, I declined because I preferred working on the front lines. I've been actively engaged in sales for nearly 40 years. While I don't hold a specific position, my colleagues and even the president himself have come to trust and rely on me, often seeking my advice. However, just before my retirement, a sudden turn of events occurred. The president fell seriously ill and had to be hospitalized. Despite 6 months of treatment, he passed away a year ago. His son has taken over as the successor. Unfortunately, the second-generation president is quite a troublesome character. He abuses his position, running rampant within the company. With only 3 years left until my retirement, I had hoped to pass on the legacy of the former president, but my efforts have been in vain. Ignoring advice from me and others, he continued to take objectionable actions. I've been grappling with how to handle this situation. And now, the second-generation president has caused an unimaginable scandal, one that far surpasses anything I could have anticipated. As I returned from my usual sales rounds, I bumped into the second-generation president right at the company entrance. Despite it being well past noon, he seemed to have just arrived for work. Unbelievable. It's not the first time that he has been late, but it's unacceptable for employees to witness such behavior. I decided to address it with him. In response, the second-generation president glared at me, sighed as if annoyed, and retorted,
What's wrong with me, as the president, arriving fashionably late?
That's not the point.
I replied, exasperated, and asked about the reason for his lateness. Avoiding eye contact, he mumbled,
Last night's business dinner went on longer than expected. Can't be helped.
Our company's clients were reasonable people, so there was no way a business dinner would interfere with work the next day. Curious about which client he had entertained, I pressed for details. The second-generation president visibly squirmed and muttered,
It doesn't matter.
He had a habit of using business dinners as an excuse to drink late into the night, consistently showing up late the following day. Despite my repeated admonitions, he remained unapologetic, and the frequency of his tardiness only increased. On this particular day, I'd had enough. I urged him to stop the late-night revelry disguised as business dinners, even if he had to lie about it. But the second-generation president responded with irritation.
Enough! Don't lecture me, an old-timer employee, like you're some expert advising the president.
With that, he shoved me aside and walked away. Disheartened by his consistent behavior, I returned to work, still dealing with the same old second-generation president. A week later. On that day, I was summoned to the president's office. As I entered, I found the second-generation president reclining in his chair, looking rather scheming. When I inquired about the purpose of the meeting, he grinned and began speaking.
You really managed to ruin my mood the other day, didn't you? Despite nursing a hangover, I dragged myself to the office. Gratitude is one thing, but I won't tolerate being lectured. Your respect for the president is sorely lacking.
When the second generation president relentlessly criticized me, I listened silently. Then he confirmed.
You've got just a little over 2 years until retirement, right?
I nodded, and with a malicious grin, he continued with shocking words.
You're fired today. Just a little over 2 years until retirement, and it's a shame. Consider it punishment for getting on my nerves. Enjoy your downfall.
He taunted. I was dumbfounded. My sales performance was solid, and I had no reason to be dismissed. When I pressed him for the reason behind my termination, the second generation president nonchalantly explained.
Isn't it obvious? You're a nuisance. Always nitpicking at everything I do. I don't need an employee who questions every move I make.
Despite diligently considering the company's well-being, how could I accept being fired for doing my job? I couldn't. So, I told the second generation president to reconsider. After all, I still couldn't quit. When the former president was hospitalized, he entrusted me with the task of continuing to support the company and his son. If the second generation president persists in his arrogant behavior without reconsidering, the social trust built by the former president could be jeopardized. Desperately trying to persuade him, I faced the second generation president's mocking laughter.
Even without you, I've managed the president's duties admirably this past year. Our business is thriving, and revenue is up. Besides, why pay a pension to an old-timer like you when we could hire young talent? So, no retirement package for you.
Despite my modest salary compared to his extravagant drinking expenses, I sternly replied, the company's success is due to the collective efforts of employees. A president who parties and arrives late daily shouldn't get too full of himself. Plus, if I'm fired now, a major contract I handle might be canceled, causing significant losses for the company. But no matter how much I explain, the second generation president remains unyielding, even shouting,
Shut up. Anyone can do your job. Is your plan to sweet-talk me into working until retirement? Not happening.
And so, the cycle continues, firmly set on firing me. The next day, relentless harassment from the second generation president began. My documents were being discarded without my consent, and my PC data was being erased. Although I had properly backed up work materials and data, there was no impact on our business partners. However, there were instances when he spilled a drink on me unexpectedly. He would go to great lengths to harass me, using various tactics. Eventually, he even threatened to harm my family if I continued working at the company. Faced with this situation, I couldn't remain silent. When I protested, the second generation president repeatedly pressured me to quit. It was the last straw for me. The next day, armed with my resignation letter, I headed to the president's office. As I entered, I saw the president gleefully plotting new ways to harass me. He looked at me disdainfully and said,
When will you bring that resignation letter? I'll do whatever it takes to get rid of you. And don't think the threats to your family were empty. Those were real. If you don't like it, bring your resignation immediately.
Provoked by the second generation president's words, I silently handed over my resignation letter. He momentarily froze, caught off guard, but soon broke into a triumphant smile, as if celebrating the removal of an obstacle. With genuine contempt for the second generation president, I asked one final thing. Although he nitpicked about using polite language, I had already decided to quit, so I didn't need to use honorifics with this guy.
I don't recognize you as the president. You'll regret this. Goodbye.
I ignored the second generation president, who laughed mockingly, and left the company. While I felt sorry for the former president, it seemed I'd have to find another way to deal with this inept successor. Determined to release my pent-up frustration, I prepared for a powerful counterattack. I would never forgive him. Then, just 1 week later, as I had anticipated, I received a panicked phone call from the second-generation president. He was in a frenzy.
Show up at the office immediately. Every company we deal with is threatening to suspend contracts if you're not handling it. We're on the brink of bankruptcy. Just get here now.
Before I could even respond, the second-generation president continued shouting. I retorted nonchalantly.
You're the one who fired me, kid.
The second-generation president gasps at my obviously assertive attitude.
I warned you about the potential for causing significant damage to the company. It's the result of you running wild without listening. It's no longer my concern.
When brushed him off, the second-generation president panicked, saying he never expected this to happen. I've been dealing with our business partners since the company's inception. When I went around to bid farewell, they all asked why I was leaving so close to retirement. So, I laid bare your foolish actions. As I recounted the mistreatment I'd received from the second-generation president to our business partners, their anger flared. They declared, even though he's the founder's son, we won't do business with a disrespectful person like him. Consequently, long-standing partners began terminating contracts one after another. The second-generation president, flustered, berated me.
Why would you say such things? Do you think it doesn't matter what happens to the company? If this continues, both I and the employees will be left in dire straits.
I calmly replied. At the very least, our valued employees won't suffer. Clearly, you were never informed by the former president, were you? Well, it's no surprise. No matter how much I tried to teach you about management, you never paid any attention to work at all, did you? When I speak with a tone of pity, the second-generation president retorts with a voice strained by anger.
You know, it was already decided that I, the founder's son, would take over the company. Learning about management was unnecessary for me. Besides, my methods have worked just fine until now.
His words prompted a deep sigh from me. Clearly, he still didn't grasp the situation.
The success of the business wasn't due to your abilities, but rather the excellence of the employees. The former president secretly expressed concerns about entrusting the company to you. However, as a parent, he wanted to leave something for his son. I supported you based on that sentiment.
I genuinely believed I was helping the second-generation president become a capable leader. Little did I know he would betray me like this. He never thought such an exchange would happen. After a moment of silence, the second-generation president, in a panic, turned his hand back to me and said he would hire me again.
Fine, I'll hire you back. Support me again. After all, you promised to support me to my father, didn't you?
He said, reverting to his high-pressure attitude. In response, I calmly continued the conversation.
Remember what I said? I no longer recognize you as the president. There's another promise I made with the former president. If you ever behave tyrannically as the president and endanger the company, I'm authorized to step in and restore it. Moreover, the former president transferred 51% of the company's shares to me.
With a majority stake, I hold the shareholder rights, including the authority to remove directors. The former president entrusted me to act decisively if his son went off the rails.
What? So, are you saying I won't be the president anymore?
Clearly flustered, the second-generation president, I nonchalantly replied.
As long as you remain the president, our business partners won't resume dealings. I made a promise to protect the company alongside the former president. So, you're in the way.
My firm response left the second-generation president in tears. He blurted out.
Don't say that. If you return and persuade our business partners, everything will be fine. Is it really necessary to remove me as president?
Ignoring his desperate pleas, I firmly stated,
I'm no longer an employee, so I have no reason to follow your orders. If you have something to say, convince the business partners yourself.
With that, the second-generation president angrily hung up the phone. And a few hours later, once again, he called me and exclaimed,
Hey, I'll give up being the president. Instead, make me the managing director. Then we'll settle things.
It seems his attempts to persuade our business partners failed. Quite amusing, really. I retorted,
How about changing your attitude for once? I've repeatedly claimed the company doesn't need you.
My assertive statement left him in despair. He tried to promise compliance from now on, but it's too late.
There were plenty of chances for change. Yet, you squandered them all. You trampled on the former president's intentions. So, live with regret for every action you've taken.
As I delivered this stern message, he fell silent, tears streaming down his face. But there's no room for sympathy. I conveyed my final thoughts and ended the conversation with a sense of satisfaction. Subsequently, the second-generation president was indeed dismissed as I had declared. His actions severely damaged the company's reputation, and due to the contract terminations, he faced disciplinary dismissal for causing substantial harm. The once haughty former second-generation president, who had pushed me out with such arrogance, ultimately faced condemnation from all employees and was ousted from the company. Since then, he managed to find another job, but due to his incompetence, he was quickly fired, losing all his confidence. Having exhausted his meager savings, he now seems to be barely scraping by, worn out from doing backbreaking day labor. As for me, I returned to the company, apologized to our business partners regarding the recent events, and managed to renegotiate contracts upon my return. Although I temporarily assumed the role of president, I entrusted capable and trustworthy employees to lead while I resumed vigorous business operations. With the remaining time until retirement, I intend to honor the promise I made with the former president and safeguard the company.
How did you find this story? If you enjoyed it, consider subscribing to our channel. And until next time, take care.